The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete floor of my garage. It was past midnight, and I was elbow-deep in the engine of my '98 Ford pickup, trying to fix a carburetor that had been giving me trouble for weeks. The house was quiet, except for the distant hum of Miranda's voice drifting through the thin walls. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Eddie Castellano, and I've been fixing things my whole life. Cars, security cameras, broken windows, busted relationships, though I was starting to think that last one might be beyond repair. At 38, I ran a small security installation business in our gritty New England town, the kind of place where the American dream came to die a slow, painful death between strip malls and abandoned factories. Miranda's voice grew louder, and I caught fragments of what sounded like a video call. Curiosity got the better of me, so I wiped my hands on an old rag and crept closer to the kitchen window. "He's so clueless, it's almost cute," Miranda was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she thought she was being clever. "Chad's twice the man Eddie is. I mean, look at his abs, and the bank account helps too." I froze. My wife of 12 years was talking about another man's abs and bank account while I was out here trying to keep our piece of shit truck running. "Well, I guess my 6-pack of Bud doesn't count," I muttered to myself, feeling that familiar burn of humiliation creeping up my neck. Through the window, I could see Miranda perched on our kitchen counter, laptop open, talking animatedly to whoever was on the other end of the screen. She was wearing the black silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. "The plan is working perfectly," she continued. "Eddie's so focused on his little camera business that he hasn't noticed a thing. Chad and I have been meeting at the Riverside Motel every Tuesday and Thursday. God, the man knows how to treat a woman." My hands clenched into fists. The Riverside Motel was a dive on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where dreams went to overdose. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months, Miranda had told me she was attending wellness consultant training sessions in the city. I'd even encouraged her, proud that she was building her career. What a fucking idiot I'd been. "The best part is, he actually thinks I'm working late to help our finances," Miranda laughed, and it was a sound like breaking glass. "Meanwhile, Chad's been teaching me about real success. Did I mention his new BMW? Eddie's still driving that embarrassing truck from the Clinton administration." I backed away from the window, my mind racing. 12 years of marriage, a 10-year-old daughter sleeping upstairs, and this is what it had come to. My wife was cheating on me with some guy named Chad who apparently had abs and a BMW. The smart thing would have been to confront her right then, but I've never been accused of being smart. Instead, I did what any self-respecting man would do. I went back to my truck and started planning. Over the next 3 days, I used my professional skills to do a little investigating. Security camera installation had taught me a thing or two about surveillance, and it turned out Miranda wasn't nearly as careful as she thought. Her phone was synced to our shared laptop, which meant I had access to her text messages, location data, and photo backups. What I found made my stomach turn and my blood boil in equal measure. Hundreds of texts between Miranda and Chad Morrison, a 32-year-old fitness influencer who ran a small gym across town. The messages ranged from explicit photos to detailed plans about their future together. Apparently, Chad was helping Miranda start her own wellness consulting business, and they'd even opened a joint bank account for emergencies. The photos were the worst part. Miranda in lingerie I'd never seen before, posing in hotel rooms I'd never been to, with a man whose abs did, admittedly, put my beer gut to shame. But what really got me was the timestamp on one particular photo. It was taken in our bedroom, in our bed, while I was at work installing cameras at a grocery store downtown. They'd been fucking in my bed. That night, I tracked Miranda's phone to the Riverside Motel. She'd told me she was having dinner with her sister to discuss their mother's upcoming birthday party. Another lie in an apparently endless series of lies. I sat in my truck in the motel parking lot, staring at Chad's silver BMW parked outside room 237. The vanity plate read, Chad Fit, because of course it did. I'd brought a pocket knife with the intention of slashing his tires, but when I got close to the car, I noticed something better. Chad had left his windows cracked open, and his gym bag was sitting on the passenger seat. Inside the bag, I found his wallet, his phone, and a small baggie of what looked suspiciously like steroids. I pocketed the steroids and used my knife to carve a message into the leather of his driver's seat. ABS this, Chad. Then I slashed 2 tires for good measure. I was walking back to my truck, feeling pretty pleased with myself, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a video file, and when I opened it, my blood ran cold. The video showed me keying Chad's car and slashing his tires, filmed from across the parking lot with perfect clarity. The message that followed was short and to the point. Smile for the camera, tough guy. ZZ. Miranda's best friend Zara, who worked as a social media strategist and had always given me the creeps with her fake smile and calculating eyes. I was being watched, and worse, I was being set up. The next morning, Miranda came home with red eyes and a story about her sister having relationship problems that had kept them talking until 3 in the morning. She was a good liar. I had to give her that. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed her. You look tired, honey, she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been wrapped around Chad's dick a few hours earlier. Maybe you should take a break from working on that truck. It's keeping you up too late. Yeah, maybe you're right, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee and watching her performance. How's your sister doing? Oh, you know how it is. Men can be such pigs sometimes. The irony was so thick, I could have cut it with the same knife I'd used on Chad's tires. Over the next week, the psychological warfare began in earnest. Miranda started coming home later and later, always with elaborate explanations about client meetings and networking events. She bought new clothes, expensive ones, and claimed they were investments in her professional image. Meanwhile, the neighbors started looking at me differently. Mrs. Kelly from next door, who usually waved when she saw me working in the garage, now just stared with a mixture of pity and disgust. The mailman stopped making small talk. Even the kid who delivered our newspaper started throwing it into the bushes instead of onto the porch. It didn't take long to figure out why. Zara had been busy spreading rumors about my violent behavior at the motel, painting me as an unstable husband who was harassing his wife's business associates. The story had been carefully crafted, just enough truth to be believable, with enough spin to make me look like the villain. The worst part was watching my daughter Ava navigate the tension in our house. She was smart enough to sense that something was wrong, but too young to understand what. She started asking questions like, "Why is Mommy always working? And why don't you and Mommy watch movies together anymore?" I didn't have good answers for her. My breaking point came on a Saturday morning when Miranda announced that we were having brunch with her sister Rachel at Café Nouveau, the pretentious bistro downtown that charged $18 for eggs Benedict. "I think it would be good for us to get out together as a family," Miranda said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. She was wearing a new dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Rachel's going through a rough patch, and she could use our support. What she really meant was that she wanted to parade me around in public so people could see what a stable, loving wife she was. It was all part of the act. Café Nouveau was packed with the usual weekend crowd of young professionals and suburban families pretending to be sophisticated. Rachel was already seated at a corner table, looking genuinely distressed about whatever relationship drama she was dealing with. "Eddie," she said, standing to hug me. "It's so good to see you. Miranda's told me so much about how supportive you've been with her new business venture." I I glanced at Miranda, who was smiling that perfect fake smile she'd mastered. "Just trying to be a good husband," I said. We ordered our overpriced food and made small talk about Rachel's job at the insurance company and Ava's performance in her school play. Everything seemed normal until the check arrived. "I'll get this," Miranda announced, pulling out her wallet with a flourish. "It's the least I can do after all the success I've been having with my consulting work." She handed the server a credit card, not one of our joint cards, but something new and shiny with her name embossed in gold letters. 5 minutes later, the server returned with an embarrassed expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card has been declined. Do you have another form of payment?" Miranda's face went through several shades of red. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake." She tried 2 more cards, both declined. The restaurant was busy, and other customers were starting to stare. Rachel looked mortified, and Ava was asking loudly why Mommy's cards weren't working. "It's okay," I said, pulling out my own wallet. "I've got it." But when I opened my wallet, I made a show of checking my own cards with exaggerated concern. That's weird. All our joint accounts seem to be frozen. Must be some kind of bank error." I pulled out a prepaid card I'd bought specifically for this moment and handed it to the server. "Try this one." The card went through. Barely. I'd loaded exactly enough money to cover the check and a modest tip. As we left the restaurant, I could hear other customers whispering about the couple who couldn't afford their brunch. Miranda was silent during the drive home, her jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. But I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, while she was upstairs working on her laptop, I made some calls. It turned out that Chad's gym had been operating without proper insurance, and a few anonymous tips to the right city departments resulted in some very inconvenient inspections. I also reached out to Tina, the bartender at O'Malley's, who had dated Chad briefly the year before. "Oh, honey," Tina said when I explained the situation. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. That boy's got more skeletons in his closet than a medical school." Tina had stories. Stories about Chad's steroid use, his habit of sleeping with clients, and his tendency to borrow money from women and never pay it back. More importantly, she had pictures from their brief relationship that showed Chad in some very compromising situations. "I've been waiting for the right moment to use these," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Looks like that moment just arrived." That evening, Miranda found me in the garage, working on the truck again. She was holding her laptop and wearing an expression I'd never seen before. Part fury, part fear. "We need to talk," she said. "Sure. What's on your mind?" "Someone hacked into my business accounts, all my client contracts have been canceled, and there are photos circulating online that are making Chad look bad. Really bad." I kept my eyes focused on the engine. "That's terrible. Have you called the police?" "Don't play dumb with me, Eddie. I know it was you." I finally looked up at her, wiping my hands on the rag. "Me? I don't know anything about hacking. I install security cameras for grocery stores." "Then explain this," she said, turning the laptop screen toward me. It was a folder labeled Insurance, and it contained screenshots of all her text messages with Chad, copies of their explicit photos, and bank statements showing the secret account they'd opened together. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the timestamp showing that the folder had been created 6 months ago, right around the time their affair had started. I'd been documenting everything from the beginning, building a case without even realizing it. "You've been spying on me," she whispered. "I've been protecting myself," I corrected. "And it's a good thing too, because apparently my wife has been fucking some steroid-addled gym rat in our bed while I'm at work." The words hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Miranda's face went through several emotions: anger, shame, defiance, before settling on something that looked almost like relief. "So you know," she said. "I know everything." She closed the laptop and sat down on an overturned crate, suddenly looking older than her 36 years. What do you want? I want to know why. Why? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because Chad makes me feel alive. Because he has ambition and drive and a future. Because when I look at you, all I see is this garage and that stupid truck and a man who's given up on everything. Her words hit harder than any physical blow could have. But they also clarified something for me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about survival. Well, I said, I guess we both learned something new today. I turned back to the engine, dismissing her. After a moment, I heard her footsteps retreating toward the house. That night, I lay in bed listening to Miranda make hushed phone calls in the bathroom. She was trying to do damage control, but it was too late. The photos Tina had shared were already making their rounds on social media, and Chad's reputation was in free fall, but I wasn't satisfied yet, not even close. The next few weeks were like watching a slow-motion car crash. Chad's gym got shut down by the health department after they found unsanitary conditions and evidence of illegal steroid distribution. Miranda's wellness consulting business collapsed when her clients discovered that most of her certifications were fake or expired. I'd spent years installing security systems, which meant I'd learned a lot about people's secrets and vulnerabilities. I knew which businesses cut corners, which marriages were hanging by threads, and which supposedly successful people were actually drowning in debt. Chad Morrison, it turned out, was drowning deeper than most. His BMW was leased, not owned. His apartment was 3 months behind on rent. His social media presence was built on fake followers and borrowed money. When the steroid scandal broke, his sponsors dropped him faster than a hot potato. Miranda tried to distance herself from the fallout, but she was too deeply connected. Their joint bank account, the one they'd opened for emergencies, got frozen when the authorities started investigating Chad's business practices. Suddenly, all those expensive clothes and restaurant meals she'd been enjoying were coming out of our household budget. "This is temporary," she kept saying. "Once this whole thing blows over, I'll rebuild. I'll start fresh." But I wasn't planning to give her that chance. The confrontation I'd been building toward finally came on a Thursday evening at Big Frank's boxing gym, the place where I'd learned to fight as a teenager. Frank Kowalski was pushing 70, but he still ran the gym like a drill sergeant, and he'd been like a father to me after my own dad died. "You look like shit, Eddie," Frank said, watching me work the heavy bag. "What's eating you?" I told him everything: Miranda, Chad, the affair, the humiliation, the slow destruction of everything I'd thought was solid in my life. Frank listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or grunting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You know what your problem is?" he finally said. "You're fighting their fight instead of your own. They want you angry and stupid and making mistakes. Don't give them what they want." "Then what should I give them?" "Give them what they deserve. But be smart about it. Beat them at their own game." That night, I put Frank's advice into action. Instead of lashing out, I started planning. Real planning, with contingencies and backup plans and careful attention to legal boundaries. I moved our savings into accounts that Miranda couldn't access, citing security concerns about the recent hacking incidents. I documented every expense she'd made using our joint credit cards, building a paper trail of financial infidelity. I even hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Jim Santos, who owed me a favor from when I'd installed cameras at his daughter's store. "Your wife's not as careful as she thinks," Jim told me after a week of surveillance. "She's still meeting with this Chad character, even after his gym got shut down. They're planning something." "Planning what?" "Near as I can tell, they're trying to start a new business together. Some kind of online fitness and wellness thing. They've been meeting with investors, showing them fake revenue projections and testimonials from clients who don't exist. It was fraud, plain and simple. But instead of turning them in immediately, I decided to let them dig their hole a little deeper. The breaking point came when Chad showed up at my house. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was in the garage working on a security system for a local restaurant. Ava was at a friend's house, and Miranda was supposedly at the grocery store. I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway and looked up to see Chad Morrison standing in my garage doorway. He was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'9", with the kind of artificially enhanced physique that screamed steroid abuse. His face was healing from what looked like cuts from broken glass, probably from when he'd punched the mirror at his gym in frustration. "We need to talk," he said. I set down my screwdriver and turned to face him. "Do we? You're fucking with my life, and I want it to stop." "I'm not fucking with anything. I'm just living my life, same as always." He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his gym-built muscles. "Don't play dumb. I know you're behind the health department investigation. I know you leaked those photos. I know you've been sabotaging everything Miranda and I are trying to build. Prove it." He pulled out his phone and started recording. "I want you to admit what you've been doing. I want you to confess that you've been harassing us." I looked directly into the camera and smiled. "My name is Eddie Castellano, and I've never harassed anyone in my life. I'm just a guy who installs security cameras for a living." Chad's face flushed red. "You son of a bitch. You think you're so smart. Smarter than a guy who punches mirrors when he gets angry." That did it. He lunged at me with his phone still recording, throwing a wild haymaker that would have knocked me out if it had connected. But 20 years of boxing training doesn't just disappear, and I stepped aside at the last second. Chad's momentum carried him forward, and his fist connected with the metal workbench instead of my face. I heard bones crack, and he screamed in pain and rage. "Jesus Christ!" he yelled, clutching his hand. "You broke my fucking hand." "You broke your own hand," I said calmly. "I was standing over here the whole time. Your phone probably got it all on video." He was still recording, and the footage would clearly show him attacking me while I stood motionless. It was perfect evidence of his violent instability, exactly the kind of thing that would destroy what was left of his credibility. "You planned this," he gasped, cradling his injured hand. "I didn't plan anything. You came to my house, you started recording, and you threw a punch at me. That's assault, Chad. I should call the police." Instead, I took out my own phone and started recording him. For the record, Chad Morrison just came to my home uninvited and attempted to assault me while recording it on his phone. He injured himself in the process, and now he's claiming it's somehow my fault. Turn that fucking thing off. "Why? I thought you liked being on camera. Isn't that your whole business model?" He stumbled toward the driveway, still clutching his hand. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is," I called after him. "It's been over for a while. You just haven't figured it out yet." That evening, Miranda came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers and a bottle of beer. "Chad told me what happened," she said. "He's in the emergency room getting his hand x-rayed." "That's unfortunate. Maybe he should be more careful about where he swings those fists." She sat down across from me, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out her next move, weighing her options. "What do you want, Eddie? Money? The house? What's it going to take to end this?" I pushed the stack of papers across the table. "I want you to sign these." She picked up the top document and started reading. It was a separation agreement I'd had drafted by a lawyer friend, laying out terms for our divorce. According to the agreement, Miranda would get half of our legitimate assets, but she would also be responsible for half of our debts, including the credit card bills she'd run up during her affair. "This is ridiculous," she said after scanning the pages. "You can't prove any of this." I pulled out my phone and showed her a video file. "Actually, I can prove all of it. This is security footage from the Riverside Motel showing you and Chad entering room 237 on 17 different occasions over the past 6 months. I also have copies of all your text messages, photos, bank statements, and financial records." Her face went pale. "How did you get motel security footage?" I install security systems for a living, Miranda. I know people. She was quiet for a long moment, reading through the separation agreement more carefully. What about Ava? Joint custody. She spends weekdays with you, weekends with me. I'll keep paying child support, but you'll need to find your own place to live. And if I don't sign? I opened my laptop and showed her a folder containing hundreds of files, photos, videos, documents, recordings. Then all of this becomes public. Your clients, your family, your friends, everyone in town gets to see exactly what kind of person you really are. She stared at the screen, her face cycling through emotions. Finally, she laughed, a bitter, defeated sound. You really hate me, don't you? No, I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. I don't hate you. I just don't love you anymore. She signed the papers. 3 weeks later, Miranda had moved into a small apartment across town, and our house felt bigger and emptier than it ever had before. Ava was handling the transition better than I'd expected, probably because the constant tension between her parents had finally been resolved. But I wasn't done yet. Through Jim Santos, I'd learned that Miranda and Chad were still trying to salvage their business partnership. They'd found a potential investor, some out-of-town venture capitalist who specialized in wellness and fitness startups. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at a lakeside cabin that Chad had borrowed from a friend. It was the perfect opportunity for the final act of my revenge. I spent Friday night preparing. I loaded my truck with everything I'd need: cameras, recording equipment, and a few other supplies. I also made some phone calls, including one to Zara. "Eddie," she said when she answered, "this is unexpected." "I think we should meet," I told her. "There are some things you should know about Miranda and Chad's business plan." "What kind of things?" "The kind that could get you in serious trouble if you're not careful." Zara had been Miranda's social media strategist and closest friend for years, but she was also ambitious and ruthless. If I could convince her that Miranda was planning to betray her, she might be willing to help me destroy them both. We met at a coffee shop downtown, and I laid out everything I knew about Miranda and Chad's fraudulent business scheme. I showed her the fake testimonials, the fabricated revenue projections, and the forged documents they were planning to show their investor. "If this goes south, you'll be the one who gets blamed," I told her. "You're the social media expert. When the authorities start investigating, they'll assume you created all the fake content." Zara's face went through several expressions as she processed the implications. "That bitch," she finally whispered. "She's setting me up to take the fall." "Looks that way." "What do you want me to do?" I told her about the meeting at the lakeside cabin. "I want you to be there. I want you to confront them with the evidence before they can scam their investor. And what do you get out of it?" "I get to watch them destroy each other." Saturday afternoon was overcast and humid, with dark clouds building on the horizon. The lakeside cabin was isolated, surrounded by pine trees and accessible only by a narrow dirt road. It was the kind of place where people went to disappear for a while. I arrived early and set up my surveillance equipment in the woods nearby. I had multiple cameras positioned to capture everything that was about to happen, along with wireless microphones that would pick up every word. Miranda and Chad arrived first, driving separately. Miranda looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and adjusting her hair. Chad's hand was still in a cast from his encounter with my workbench, but he was trying to project confidence. The investor showed up 20 minutes later, a well-dressed woman in her 50s driving a luxury SUV. They spent an hour inside the cabin, presumably going through their presentation and discussing terms. That's when Zara arrived. I watched through my camera as she marched up to the cabin door and knocked loudly. When Chad answered, she pushed past him without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk," I heard her say through my wireless microphone. What followed was the most beautiful destruction I'd ever witnessed. Zara confronted Miranda with evidence of the fraudulent business plan, accusing her of planning to frame Zara for the fake social media content. Miranda tried to deny it, but Zara had done her homework. She'd found emails and text messages that clearly showed Miranda's intention to use Zara as a scapegoat. "You were going to throw me under the bus," Zara shouted. "After everything I've done for you, you were going to let me take the blame for your lies." The investor tried to leave, but Chad blocked the door, desperately trying to salvage the deal. "This is just a misunderstanding," he kept saying. "We can work this out." But Zara wasn't finished. She revealed that she'd been investigating Miranda's business practices for weeks, ever since I'd first approached her. She'd discovered that Miranda had been stealing clients from her previous employers, using fake certifications to win contracts, and embezzling money from several wellness programs she'd managed. "You want to know the truth about Miranda Castellano?" Zara said, turning to the investor. "She's a fraud and a thief, and she's been planning to steal your money from day one." Miranda finally snapped. She lunged at Zara, screaming about betrayal and jealousy. Chad tried to separate them, but his broken hand made him clumsy, and all three of them ended up in a tangle on the cabin floor. The investor took advantage of the chaos to slip out the door and drive away as fast as her luxury SUV could carry her. I watched it all through my cameras, recording every moment of their mutual destruction. But the best part was still to come. As the storm clouds finally opened up and rain began to pour down, I emerged from the woods and walked up to the cabin. Through the windows, I could see Miranda, Chad, and Zara still arguing, their voices hoarse from shouting. I knocked on the door. When Chad opened it, his face went white. "What the fuck are you doing here?" "I came to watch the show," I said, holding up my phone to show them the live stream I'd been broadcasting. "Smile, everybody. You're on the internet." The realization hit them all at once. Everything they'd just said and done had been recorded and broadcast live to Miranda's client list, their business contacts, and anyone else who'd bothered to tune in. "You son of a bitch," Miranda whispered. "You destroyed yourselves," I said. "I just provided the cameras." Chad tried to rush me, but I stepped aside and let him stumble past me into the rain. His cast got soaked immediately, and he slipped on the wet ground, falling face first into the mud. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I told them, walking back to my truck. "Try not to commit any more felonies on camera." As I drove away, I could hear them screaming at each other in the rain, their partnership and their schemes finally collapsing under the weight of their own greed and stupidity. 2 months later, our town's annual Founders' Day block party was in full swing. It was one of those perfect September afternoons when the air was crisp and the leaves were just starting to turn, and half the town had turned out for food trucks, live music, and the annual charity auction. I was manning a booth for my security business, handing out flyers and talking to potential customers. Business had been good lately. Word had gotten around that I was the guy who'd exposed the wellness scam, and people seemed to trust someone who'd stood up to fraudsters. Ava was helping me hand out flyers, proud to be working with her dad. She'd adjusted well to the divorce, splitting her time between my house and Miranda's small apartment. If anything, she seemed happier now that the constant tension was gone. "Dad, look," Ava said, pointing toward the main stage. "Isn't that Mom?" I looked up to see Miranda approaching the microphone at the center of the block party. She was dressed nicely, but I could see the stress in her face and the way she held herself. The past few months hadn't been kind to her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd through the sound system, "I'd like to take a moment to address some rumors that have been circulating about me." The crowd quieted down, sensing drama. I moved closer, curious about what she was planning to say. "Some of you may have heard about my business troubles," Miranda continued, "about the accusations that have been made against me. I want you to know that these are all lies, spread by my vindictive ex-husband who couldn't handle the fact that I was trying to build something better for myself and our daughter." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt people's eyes turning toward me, and I realized that Miranda was trying to rehabilitate her reputation by painting me as the villain. Eddie Castellano is a bitter, violent man who destroyed my business out of jealousy, she said, her voice growing stronger. He stalked me, he harassed my business partners, and he violated my privacy in ways that should be illegal. I'm here today to set the record straight and to ask for your support as I try to rebuild my life. It was a good performance, I had to admit. She was playing the victim card perfectly, and I could see some people in the crowd nodding sympathetically. That's when Chad appeared at the edge of the crowd. He looked terrible, thinner than before, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd been drinking too much and sleeping too little. His hand had healed, but he moved like a man who'd been broken in ways that didn't show. "That's bullshit," he shouted, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. "Tell them the truth, Miranda. Tell them about the fake certifications. Tell them about the money you stole." Miranda's face went pale. "Chad, don't what? Don't tell them how you convinced me to invest my life savings in your fake business? Don't tell them how you were planning to disappear with the investors' money and leave me holding the bag?" The crowd was riveted now, sensing that they were witnessing something explosive. I pulled out my phone and started recording, just like old times. Chad stumbled up onto the stage, and Miranda tried to back away from the microphone, but he grabbed it from her, his voice echoing across the block party. "You want to know who Miranda Castellano really is?" He slurred into the microphone. "She's a liar and a cheat and a thief. She destroyed my life, she destroyed her marriage, and she would have destroyed all of you if you'd been stupid enough to trust her." "Get him off the stage," Miranda shouted to the event organizers, but they seemed frozen by the spectacle. That's when Zara appeared. She climbed onto the stage with a folder full of documents, her face set in grim determination. "Since we're telling the truth," she said, taking the microphone from Chad, "let me share some facts with everyone." She opened the folder and began reading from Miranda's emails, detailing the fraudulent business schemes, the fake testimonials, and the plans to embezzle investor money. She had bank statements, forged documents, and recorded phone calls, everything needed to paint a complete picture of Miranda's crimes. The crowd was dead silent now, hanging on every word. Miranda tried to grab the microphone back, but Zara pushed her away. "You wanted to destroy me," Zara said. "You wanted to make me the scapegoat for your lies. Well, now everyone gets to see who you really are." Chad, meanwhile, had spotted me in the crowd. "There he is," he shouted, pointing in my direction. "The mastermind, Eddie fucking Castellano." All eyes turned to me, and I felt a moment of panic. This wasn't how I'd planned for things to go. I'd wanted Miranda to be exposed, but not like this, not in a chaotic spectacle that made everyone look insane. But then I realized something. I didn't need to defend myself. The truth was on my side, and everyone here was about to see it. I walked up to the stage, and someone handed me the microphone. "My name is Eddie Castellano," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent crowd, "and everything you just heard is true." I looked out at the faces staring back at me, neighbors, customers, friends, strangers. Miranda cheated on me with Chad. She stole money from our joint accounts to fund their fake business. She lied to clients, forged documents, and planned to commit fraud, and when I discovered what she was doing, I gathered evidence and exposed her. I paused, letting that sink in. I didn't break any laws. I didn't hurt anyone. I just refused to be a victim. And if that makes me the villain in Miranda's story, then I guess I'm okay with being the villain. The crowd was still silent, processing everything they'd heard. "You want to know what really happened?" I continued. "I'll show you." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system's Bluetooth. Within seconds, audio began playing through the speakers, recordings of Miranda and Chad planning their fraudulent business, discussing how to manipulate investors, and laughing about how stupid everyone else was. The evidence was damning and undeniable. When the recordings finished, the silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, someone in the crowd started clapping, then someone else joined in. Within moments, half the block party was applauding, and people were shouting things like, "Good for you! and she got what she deserved. Miranda looked around at the crowd with growing horror, realizing that her attempt to rehabilitate her reputation had backfired spectacularly. Chad was slumped against the stage, defeated. Zara was gathering up her documents, her revenge finally complete. I handed the microphone back to the event organizer and walked off the stage. "Dad!" Ava ran up to me, her eyes bright with excitement. "That was amazing. You're like a superhero." I hugged her, feeling lighter than I had in months. "I'm not a superhero, kiddo. I'm just a guy who knows how to fix things." As we walked back to our booth, I could hear Miranda behind us, trying desperately to explain herself to anyone who would listen. But the crowd was dispersing, and most people were avoiding eye contact with her. Chad had disappeared entirely, probably heading for the nearest bar. Zara caught up with me as I was packing up my booth materials. "That was quite a show," she said. "Not exactly what I had planned. But effective. Miranda's finished in this town. She'll have to start over somewhere else, assuming she can avoid criminal charges." "What about you? What's next?" Zara smiled, the first genuine smile I'd ever seen from her. "I'm starting my own social media consultancy. Turns out there's a lot of demand for someone who can expose fraudulent businesses." "Good for you." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Thank you for giving me the chance to get my revenge. Thank you for helping me get mine." As the sun set over our small New England town, I loaded the last of my booth materials into my truck. Ava was already buckled into the passenger seat, chattering excitedly about everything she'd witnessed. "Are you and Mom ever going to be friends again?" she asked as we drove home. "I don't think so, kiddo. But that's okay. Sometimes people grow apart, and the best thing you can do is wish them well and move on with your life." "Are you going to move on?" I thought about that for a moment. Yeah, I think I am. The truth was I already had. The anger and humiliation that had consumed me for months were gone, replaced by something that felt like peace. I'd stood up for myself, exposed the truth, and protected my daughter from the chaos that Miranda had created. Miranda would leave town within the week, taking a job in another state where nobody knew her story. Chad would struggle with alcoholism and depression for years before finally getting his life together. Zara would build a successful business, helping companies avoid the kind of fraud that Miranda had attempted. And me? I would keep fixing things, security cameras, broken relationships, and whatever else needed repair in our small corner of the world. As we pulled into our driveway, Ava looked up at me with serious eyes. "Dad, I'm proud of you." "Thanks, kiddo. I'm proud of me too." That night, after Ava was asleep, I sat in my garage working on my old truck. The carburetor was finally running smoothly, and for the first time in months, everything felt like it was exactly where it should be. I'd been called a lot of things over the past year: victim, villain, hero, mastermind. But in the end, I was just Eddie Castellano, a guy who fixed things for a living and refused to let anyone break what mattered most to him. The devil they thought they knew had turned out to be someone else entirely.